great, hit a shift in the market, and all of a sudden their product is no longer the next biggest and best thing, or it's, has some type of inherent flaw that they can't get around. And it's just amazing how that can just stop them even at their later stages of their raises.
Yeah, I think that in general, innovation and being an entrepreneur and innovator means you're working in an unknown terrain, and you need to know that when you're in an unknown state, you have more stakes against you. That's
Yeah,
the right. That's what it is. When you're going in the road which is paved and traditional, and everybody went there,
yeah,
you will do less mistakes. Let's say it this way.
yeah.
So, could you give us a bit of like few tips for the perfect storytelling?
So, few tips for great storytelling. Couple of things. One, so my first tip all the time is to practice storytelling. So you you can't come up with a perfect storyline in one shot. You need to go and take it just as you do an experiment with anything else. You take it, you iterate, you get feedback, and you continue to work that process. Because what you're going to find is that different audiences are going to respond differently to the different storylines that you have. So finding which storylines work best for your different audiences is, number one, most important in my mind. Number two is to go back and think about what is it that I'm really trying to get my audience to do. So this is the audience awareness piece. So obviously do all your persona canvas work, and trying to make sure that your stories are really well set up. But really, what is it that you need to get out of this? Because you're sharing, whether you're in a organization like a large organization like a big chemical company, or you're at a hospital, or you are in um, you're in a startup, you are doing this for a very specific reason. A lot of times when you're in startups, it's about your organization success. We've done some research on the motivation for storytelling based on organization size. So small companies is about the organization success. Large companies, it's more about your own personal or your team success. So know what it is that you need out of the story in order to make sure that you have your story set up right. The other thing is that look back at your personal experiences. What things have you experienced yourself that you can get people to help relate to? Those Taking those personal experiences and using those within your story frameworks can really add a lot of flavor and get people to resonate with the experiences that you have. Malcolm Gladwell has a great podcast called Revisionist History, and one of the episodes is called The King of Tears. And the King of Tears is about why does country music make people cry? Um,
Why?
yeah, why? And one of the reasons why, or his big crescendo at the end is that country music makes people cry because the specificity that's used in the music resonates specifically with their target audience. And it's the same reason, like, with like hip hop music, same thing. It really resonates with that community that loves that music, as opposed to something like rock and roll, which is just very generic and no one ever really gets moved to, true emotion based on, rock and roll music. So the specificities that you add to those stories and having that aligned with your audience can really help drive them to action. The last piece of advice that I will always tell people is that sharing a story, being strategic about your communication, is not about getting a yes. It's about getting to the right next step, and that right next step may be no, and that's perfectly good because your time is highly valuable. And if what you're working on you know, is not the right thing at this point in time, or you need to make some type of pivot, you have to be able to accept no. And I know that there's lots of stories out there, people that didn't take no, and they kept pushing. Once again, hero stories. That
Yeah.
isn't necessarily going to be each and every person's story. So they have to be willing to take that feedback. So don't look at storytelling as this thing that you're trying to manipulate or you're trying to get to just getting a yes. It's about getting to the right answer so that you're being the most productive with your time and your efforts as you can and your resources.
Yeah. And I see it like when you're talking in general, I do lots of public speaking and I talk to people. And for me, the most important part is if they engage, if they are feeling some of my feelings and they are engaging with me. And maybe this time they will not get all the insights but they will get only one small fracture of what I'm saying, which is
Yep,
much more than just, just knowing all the details of what I'm saying. It's like, do you know the podcast, The Moth? Do you
I
hear
do.
it?
I do not, but go ahead.
It's stories being told by it's biographical stories people tell about their own experiences.
Okay.
And when you hear it, and sometimes the stories are really, hard to hear, and sometimes they're not that interesting, but you cannot fake this feeling of me saying something about my own experience. And
Mm,
sometimes it's funny stories. They're not like making always like making you cry, but there is something so authentic in people telling their own stories that you see it cannot be like actors. And
that's
it's
right.
one of my favorite podcasts. Like it's really, really good. So
So what
it's
is
a
that called again?
recommendation.
Yeah, what is that? What
The
is that?
Moth.
The Moth. Okay, I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, it's an organization helping people telling their own stories. So they went to deprived areas at the beginning, like 20 years ago, just teaching people how to tell their own stories and share it. And now they have this big like events, people coming to stage and they are teaching them how to tell their own stories. And it's like, like everybody's coming and listening. And they have a
Yes.
podcast right now, which is really good. When I have like time, I always listen to podcasts when I'm driving.
Yeah.
And now I really miss driving because everything is online, so I'm not going to drive that much as in the past. But it's a great thing, like when you're driving, just to hear someone and it touches you. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I resonate also with the pain. So when we hit the pandemic and I had actually left the chemical field and moved over and started working at Untold, I all of a sudden lost my commute. So I used to do the audiobooks and podcasts while I was driving, and basically it's been about 2 years of mostly coming downstairs to work and then going upstairs to poor kids.
Yeah, I have four kids too, so it's like we're both like four kids. I could totally understand that.
Yeah, it's your constant juggling. But no,
Yeah.
storytelling is incredibly powerful